Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm presenting some testimony that I wanted to present on December the 15th, but was unable to due to lack of time. And I'm also incorporating some testimony that Robert Beinlich was going to present at that same meeting. I want to talk today about Area 8B. The map is up on the screen there.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We had a hearing, we had allocated time. Unfortunately, not everybody spoke, and that is unfortunate, but we need to understand, I think, a little procedurally how we're going to handle these, because, I mean, you could have 50 people come up and say, I didn't get my time, and we'd have another hearing. And this board, through a great deal of discussion, came to some understanding as to the hearings that we would have, the time periods we'd have. And so I'm asking about the flex. I mean, I have no problem with somebody having 2 or 3 minutes to come up and say, well, I didn't get to speak, and here's my information, but are we having another hearing?
Right. Well, that's, a thought occurred to me where I have a de facto fourth public hearing, because we had 2 from the board and 1 from the coordinating committee. So I guess I would try to steer this to new information. I mean, the issue is, though, this is oral communications on items not otherwise on the agenda, and urban and rural reserves is not on today's agenda. So it's communication time. I think the board can limit some things. It's a bit awkward because it's open and oral communications. I guess I would just ask those who have signed up to address this to perhaps not use all 5 minutes and focus on new, because we've had, some of us have had 3 public hearings plus unbelievable number of other meetings. Welcome to, I mean, we're interested in hearing. We also have, you know, a big public outreach process of 6, I think we have 4 public hearings and 2 or 3, all of which are open houses, plus 2 or 3 that are open house only, including last weekend. This Wednesday night, tomorrow night, full public hearing in Sherwood and so forth. So I would just ask that, as respect for that system, that we have a lot of outreach meetings between now and the 22nd. And we've had 2 public hearings by this board plus 1 by the coordinating committee. So if you could focus on, you know, what's new, and if you can't attend the other hearings and outreach sessions. Otherwise, we've got, you know, 3 more, we have 3 people signed up at 5 minutes each, is 15, 20 minutes. So with that, you can proceed.
Okay, I will definitely be brief. Commissioner Rogers, I appreciate you reminding me to say that my attempt here is to present new information, and so I don't want to take up your time unnecessarily. One of the things I do want to mention, kind of in response to your comments, is as we move through the process and as the Core 4 deliberates, and as people that we work with feed information to the Core 4, oftentimes the response we get is, you need to be taking this information to your county commissioners. And so we are attempting to do that. And in addition, we're getting information, maybe it's incorrect information, but we're getting information that the county commissioners are not necessarily attending these metro hearings. And so we have concerns that we're not actually going to be able to get our information to the commissioners, which is what, you know, a lot of people are telling us to do. So with that in mind,
well, there's only been 1 hearing in this January outreach, and that was downtown Portland at Metro. Tomorrow night, I think 1 or more of us will be attending.
That's good to hear. Yeah, there's also one was in Gresham, which is a long way to go for any of us out here.
Saturday, right?
Yeah, I went to the open house on Saturday, and I will be attending the Sherwood, maybe at least a piece of the open house, but certainly the hearing part, which comes like at 6, I think is when it starts.
Tomorrow.
Okay, well, good. That's good to hear. So with that in mind, all I'm just going to talk about is Area 8B, which is the urban area that's been proposed as urban, or it's been proposed as urban by the Core 4. The reason given by the Core 4 is that it would facilitate the proposed and partially funded improvements to the Highway 26 interchange. And I just want to point out that it's not necessary to designate an area as urban reserves in order to support an interchange. Interchanges are built in rural areas all the time. You look at just one interchange west to Jackson School Road, or all the interchanges between Banks and the coast. You know, interchanges are done on rural lands all the time. The second thing, if I could have the next slide, sir, is that the area that's been proposed for 2B is much larger than would actually be needed for the interchange. The red square indicates the area that's been proposed. If you look at the solid blue lines, which are the ramps. I spoke with a gentleman named Ryan Winsheimer and another gentleman, Jeff Flowers of ODOT, at their open house on December the 9th. And they indicated that if the purpose was, or the off-ramp that would extend capacity for westbound traffic wanting to go south, which is like your morning commuter traffic going down to, let's just say, Intel to Hillsborough, that ramp would probably only need to go on the other side of the wetlands from the existing ramp, which is what that solid blue line indicates. The dotted blue lines are, you know, he looked at those and said, well, that's like the Groveland extension. It certainly doesn't need to take up all that farmland. So what you'd be talking about is a small parcel that it's much, much smaller than what's proposed, just to serve those two ramps north of the Highway 26. The next slide, please. In addition, urbanization of this area would be difficult for several reasons, and I'm going to hit these quickly. As you all probably know, Weibel Creek floodplain goes through. On this map, it's still called UR2B. I guess I should note that we've adopted the nomenclature that the online survey is taking, calling things Area 8 and 8B, 8C, those kind of things. That's where all the new terminology comes from. But UR2B, Weibel Creek goes right through that area. That's a major drainage. The next slide is that there's hydrology. This is a very technical slide. I won't spend much time on it, but if you can see, there's a horizontal line, dotted line that says artesian pressure surface, and that basically refers to the subsurface water which bubbles up from time to time, and it creates seeps, and in order to deal with those seeps, farmers create tiling systems, next slide, which drain away that water and channel it to areas where it can be needed. You know, in addition, that subsurface water serves as an irrigation system that actually irrigates the lands all through the year, which is why we can do what's called dry land farming, or we don't need irrigation systems to support that in this area. Also, the kind of the downside of that, next please, is these areas flood periodically when the ground becomes saturated due to rain and the fact that it's used as a catch basin for all the drainage from upper Weibel Creek all the way down to this area. This is not an uncommon occurrence. The photo you're seeing right there is of the Standring parcel right in the area where the interchange is being proposed. And the next photo is also right from that same parcel. Flooding is a regular occurrence in this area. That's going to be difficult for any sort of urbanization effort. As has been mentioned other places, the soil quality is very high in this area. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but you've heard that. There's been presentations about the percentage of Class 1 soils in these areas. I didn't bring that map with me. It's very, very high percentage, some of the highest quality soils. There are cultural artifacts, and Native American burial sites in this area, which would be a difficulty were you to try to urbanize it. And lastly, the urbanization on the fringe is expensive because it draws city resources away from the core of the city, making mass transit more difficult, making transit in general more difficult, creating dependence on the automobile. You've heard people say that metro studies indicate that urbanizing new areas is 2 to 3 times more expensive than existing areas.
Time is up.
5 minutes?
Yep.
Oh, my
5 minutes
apologies.
is up.
Okay.
Chair Brian, if I could make a comment, not to be difficult, but the process that we have for oral communication, we, excuse me, not only do we have individual time limits, but we usually have a 10-minute time limit per subject. And the reason for this is not to cut anybody off, but oral communication is supposed to be an opportunity to introduce a new topic. And this is getting much deeper than just an introduction into a new topic. In fact, much of what we heard today, we've heard many times over before, and it's not bad information, but it just takes up more time hearing the same thing over and over again, and it's not constructive.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd have to disagree. I think some of this is new information. These photos are certainly new. I mean, and it's a challenge for citizens, for anyone else to get input into this whole process, because the Core 4 meetings, there's no opportunity for anyone to speak at those meetings. Those are Core 4 discussions around the table. We've got hearings scattered, all over the place and over a lengthy period of time. So, but yet ultimately we are deciders here in this board for the rural reserve piece. So I do find within the kind of time limits that have been discussed earlier, before you started, that this is helpful. We just need to make sure that this doesn't get out of control. But I do find this useful, and some of the information is new, and I appreciate getting it.
All right, thank you.